Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says State freebies and the cost of fiscal profligacy. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. The article here is speaking about the freebie culture that has been encouraged by number of political parties. The author takes into picture one of the examples from the state of Punjab, but he also says most of the political parties in India also follow a similar trend. What happened in Punjab? When you consider the state elections of Punjab, there were many political parties who were canvassing. During this canvassing that was happening in Punjab, one of the major political party happens to be AAP. What does AAP promise? AAP in the form of a freebie culture says that they would be providing 1,000 for women. In case there are more women as well, we would be providing the freebies that is 1,000 to all the women. This is not just restricted to AAP. Many other states, many other political parties in these states also give the freebies as well. So the author in this particular case goes on to say that this is not good for the country. He puts out four important questions. What are these questions? One, the government is borrowing the money. If it is borrowing the money and if it is using for these freebies, is it sustainable? First question. The second question is in reference when borrowing the money, the government is making use for the freebies, is it the best use of the money? Second question. Third question is with respect to the opportunity cost. What is this opportunity cost? We have to let go one for the sake of the other. If the people are accepting the freebies, at what cost are they letting go other important measures that the government have to take? This is the third question. The fourth question is in reference to who is going to keep a check on all the freebie culture that has been initiated by the political parties. So this article here takes a world view about the freebie culture. It gives us the argument in favor of the freebie culture. It opposes the freebie culture, and it also says such should not be taken up in the near future as this could be a fiscal disaster for the country. And the author also goes on to say that we have the bureaucrats who also complain to the Prime Minister of the country that there are many states who are not giving importance to the fiscal stability, and as a result some states, their economy may go the Sri Lankan way, say the bureaucrats to the Prime Minister. So it is in this particular backdrop we will try and understand everything about the freebie culture that has been encouraged by the political party. First question, what is this freebie culture? Freebie culture is nothing but the dole given to the people. Certain kinds of expenditure that are done under the populist pressure with elections in the mind. Why do they do it? Because they want to capture their vote bank, which is why they continue with the freebie culture. What is this freebie culture? Political parties promise to offer free electricity, free water supply, monthly allowance to unemployed, daily wage workers and women, as well as gadgets like laptops, smartphones, scooties, etc., in order to secure the vote of the people in their favor. So giving them everything for free without making them work for it and ultimately hurting the fiscal stability of that state is what is leading to the freebie culture. Ideally, when you look at the government borrowing the money, it has to invest in the physical infrastructure like the roads. It has to invest on the infrastructure. Instead, it can also invest on the social infrastructure like the health or the education sector. But instead of investing on the physical or the social infrastructure, it is investing on all these populist giveaways as well. If it continues to do it, what the states will do is suffer and their fiscal stability could be at problem, and on the longer run most of the states will suffer and India indirectly is bound to suffer, says this article. The author, while examining the freebie culture, also goes on to say that there are number of think tanks. They say that the states are already doing good. They have a much better fiscal balance as well. The state budgets by the Reserve Bank of India and many think tanks also say that their budget and other finances are actually doing good, so we don't have to worry. But then this is a misleading picture, says the author. When you look at the borrowing, much of the borrowing that funds these freebies happens off the budget, beyond the pale of the FRBM tracking. The typical modus modus operandi for states have been to borrow on the books of their public enterprises, in some cases by pledging future revenues of the state as the guarantee. Effectively, the burden of debt is on the state exchequer, albeit it is well concealed. What does the author say? The author goes on to say, yes, you may say that the Reserve Bank of India is saying that the state budget, the state finances are good. There are think tanks that are saying that finances of the state are good, but this is not so. Why? That is because the author goes on to say most of it is not under the books. Even before they generate the revenue in the form of taxes as well as from the center, which has to pay certain money to the states, they are taking the money, borrowing the money in advance, so it will not be present on the books of the states, and ultimately most of these accounts are also concealed by the state governments, which is why we may be seeing trouble, but this is not showcased on the papers, this is not showcased on the audit, and as a result we may not know, we do not know the gravity of this that is happening in the states, but we are for sure know that the states do not have the capacity to continue this. This is not going to be sustainable in the near future, because the large amount of borrowing that the states are making will ultimately harm, says the author. The author also goes on to say the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India had in fact pointed out that in respect of some states, if extra budgetary borrowings are taken into account, the liabilities of the government are way above what is acknowledged in the official books. So they have taken into picture that the states have taken money or borrowed money far in excess to the capacity. Their liabilities are more, and this is going to disturb the financial statements. This is going to disturb the fiscal stability, and this can result in fiscal catastrophe in the near future, says the author. So the author in this case goes on to say that this freebie culture should not be entertained in the near future, and gives us some arguments. What are these arguments? This may trigger non-compliance amongst taxpayers and eventually lead to lower revenue. If we are speaking about incentives, if we are speaking about the welfare schemes and programs, yes, the government of India as well as the respective state governments have to make sure that they come and create the welfare schemes and programs. This is for all set of people, but this is not to do with freebie culture. If it is to do with the freebie culture, what would happen? The people who are paying the taxes will not be happy with it, and eventually they may start resisting to pay taxes, and they may also evade the taxes as well. Why? Because they're not generating any of the benefits as well. Let me give you an example. This was an initiative which was taken up by the Delhi government. What did the Delhi government do? In case there are women who are traveling by the buses, they don't have to buy the tickets, they need not have to pay for the fare, said the Delhi government. This is where the popular scheme comes into picture. This is what we mean by the freebie culture. What happens if it is for the poor people? People would not oppose, but if you consider the entire women, what is the issue here? There might be women who would be capable of buying the tickets, there might also be women who are rich as well. Why should these people come under this particular blanket? So when you say the entire women community need not have to pay the price for traveling from the source to the destination, what you are violating is some of the principles of fiscal stability. So if you come up with such a populist measure just because you're anticipating that the entire women community will vote for a particular political party, this is what is populist scheme in such a case. Because the government is wasting the people's money, the taxpayers' money, in that case people may not in the near future pay the taxes because they are not generating any benefits from it, is the first issue. Freebies undercut the basic framework of the macroeconomic stability. What exactly happens? The politics of the freebies distorts the expenditure priorities. Outlays are being concentrated on the subsidy, and this basically means that they are not giving importance to the macroeconomic stability on a longer run. For them, all that matters is the shorter run. They are able to win the elections, but what happens 10 years down the lane, 20 years down the lane, they have no importance to it. So ultimately, on a longer run, we are not giving importance to the macroeconomic stability. For the shorter term gains is the second concern. It distracts outlays from environmental and sustainable growth, renewable energy, and more efficient public transport system. What is this statement? Let me explain this with the help of an example. We have the AAP government which is currently in Punjab. The Punjab government went on to say that if there are people who are using the electricity below a particular threshold, they need not have to pay the electricity charges. This basically means on one side we are making use of the coal to generate the electricity. If people continuously make use of it just because it is given for free, this ultimately means indirectly we are also contributing to the environmental pollution as well. The fourth argument says the amount states borrow collectively every year is comparable in size to the center's borrowing, which implies that the fiscal stance has as much impact as a macro stability as does that of the center. When we speak about the federal structure, what we have is the central government. We also have the state governments as well. If the country has to run, both the central government and the state government's economy has to be good. Their macroeconomic principles have to be good. If the states do not contribute it on a longer run, the center will also suffer, and then India is bound to suffer, says this statement. The more states spend on transfer payments, the less they have for spending on the physical infrastructure. So the more we give on subsidies, the more we start spending on the freebie culture. This basically means we would not be able to spend on other areas like education, health, and these are the areas where if we make investments down the lane, it will generate growth, and ultimately people would also be able to find the jobs as well. Since we are not investing on all these areas, we are hurting the country on a longer run, is another argument. We also have the chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, NK Singh ji, who went on to say the economics of freebies is invariably wrong. The economics and politics of freebies are deeply flawed. It is a race to the bottom, and it is not the road to efficiency or prosperity, but a quick passport to the fiscal disaster. These are some of the arguments that are against the freebie culture that are encouraged by the political parties. Let's also look at other side of the arguments as well. States like Tamil Nadu and Bihar are known for giving women sewing machines, saris and cycles, but they buy these from the budget revenues, contributing to the sale of these industries. This is for the sake of arguments that we are discussing. Ideally, this freebie culture should not be supported, but for the sake of arguments, let's say for example in the states like Tamil Nadu, what they are buying is number of products. These products are ultimately given to the people. So when they are buying these products, it also means they are encouraging industrial growth in the country. It also means they are buying these products from the industry, indirectly contributing to the output of the industry. So this can be considered as a boost for the supplier industry, and it is not a wasteful expenditure given the corresponding production in that industry. This is just for the sake of argument. The other one says Punjab has been criticized for giving free water and power that helps rich farmers. The contention is that only the rich have access to the pump sets that are run free to cost to extract water. Such schemes curry favor with the farmers at election time, but it can also counterintuitively be argued that wheat and rice would have been higher if those costs were not borne. What is this argument? The Punjab government is giving free electricity. It is also providing subsidies as well. If these subsidies are not given, if this free electricity is not given to the farmers, what would happen? There are farmers who are growing wheat as well as rice. So if they have to spend on their own for the electricity, this will indirectly add to the charges on the wheat and the rice. And when wheat and rice is put out in the market, the price of wheat and rice will be more. Why? Because they are spending electricity on their own. So indirectly, by contributing to the subsidies, what the government is trying to do is reduce this cost of price of the rice as well as wheat, says the argument. This is just for the sake of argument so that you know the other side of it as well. But what is the major issue? Why is this continuing? Why is that no institute is stopping it? That is because we have a number of problems and the roadblocks to it. What are these issues? One is to do with the legislature. When it comes to India, we have the legislature, we also have the executive. It is the executive who come up with the laws. They are the ones who make these subsidies, so on and so forth. But what exactly happens? The legislature will also have to question the executive. but the legislature themselves are not ready to question, because the legislature, the opposition political party, is under an apprehension that if they oppose the executive next time, they may not win the elections. So in theory, the first line of defense has to be the legislature, in particular the opposition, whose responsible is to keep the government in line, but they do not question, because they also feel that this idea has to be promoted. If it opposes, they may not win the elections, so they keep quiet. Then we have the comptroller and the auditor general. So another constitutional check that we have is the CAG audit. But what happens with the CAG audit? In practice, it has lost its teeth, since audit reports necessarily come with a lag, by when political interest has typically shifted to other hot bottom issues. What does this mean? It means we have the comptroller and the auditor general. It has to find out whether the government is spending in a right way or not. But even if it finds out that the government is making use of the public exchequer money in a wrong way for the freebies, by the time it releases its audit report, you would already have other set of issues which the opposition would be concentrating. Because it comes with a delay, this means that the audit report of CAG may not work, says the author. Then we have the market, which is also keeping a check as well. It can signal the health or otherwise of the state of finances by pricing the loans floated by different state governments differently, reflecting their debt sustainability. So the market is also not able to keep a check on the activities of the state. In fact, we have also had the judiciary as well, which has criticized the moves of the political party. The Supreme Court said that the promise of freebies was a serious issue, and as a result, it has asked all the political parties competing with each other that are announcing freebies and doles during the electioneering has the potential to upset the state finances and also vitiate free and fair elections. So the government has to be very cautious. The state political parties have to be very cautious, because it is going to harm them. It also has the potential to upset state finances, and then this also indirectly does promote what is called as biased elections, says the Supreme Court. We also have the Madras High Court, which expressed its strong displeasure over the way in which political parties in the state were vying with each other to garner votes by offering freebies. In fact, the Madras High Court also went on to say that this freebie culture makes the people of Tamil Nadu lazy, says the Madras High Court. What is the way forward? How do we overcome this particular issue? First, the FRBM acts of the center as well as the states need to be amended to enforce a more complete disclosure of the liabilities on their exchequer. So there are some which are on the account, there are some which is beyond the account. So every single liability, even if it is for the future, that should be on the books. So we should have the FRBM Act bringing a major amendment and introducing all these wordings. Second, under the constitution, states are required to take the center's permission when they borrow, and when they are borrowing, the center must impose certain conditionalities, and when these conditions are met, only then you would be able to borrow, is the second recommendation. Finally, there is a draconian provision in the Constitution of India which allows the president to declare financial emergency in any state if he or she is satisfied the financial stability is threatened. If states do not follow it, the central government, that is the president, should go ahead imposing such financial emergency. Until now, we have not used this financial emergency provision, but if states do not listen, in all likelihood, if they're not even listening to all the conditions imposed by the central government, in that case, the president may use this Brahmastra, which is a political weapon, says the author. So going forward, the central government should set an example. The central government in the past has also violated the FRBM Act as well. So the central government should set itself as an example, and the state should also follow it. And this ultimately means that only when we have good fiscal behavior for the states, the future of the country will be good. If we do not, then we could be moving towards the fiscal disaster, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says from higher to higher education. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. The article here is speaking about the government of India's proposal to come up with what is called as the digital university. The author further goes on to say, with the establishment of this digital initiative, what we will have is more number of people taking through the routes of the digital university. There can be an hybrid model in the education where you would have the digital mode of education and you would also have the physical mode of education coming together. So this article here is primarily focusing on the digital university and the future of education on the digital terms. First up, we have to understand what is this digital university. Through this scheme, the students even sitting in remote parts of the country will be able to get access to quality education by the hubs created by this model while sitting at their home via the digital medium. This basically means we would have the central government which will create this digital university. This digital university will create and collaborate with the best of the universities and institutions in the country, and it will impart teaching in the regional languages, making use of the information and communication technology formats. So making use of the ICT when education is given to the people where they need not have to be physically present in the university, but everything can be done via the ICT tools and technology is what is called as digital university. The digital university will be set up as per the Indian Society for Technical Education and Standards. Apart from this initiative, the government also has taken multiple other initiatives to promote digital education. What are those? Simultaneously, more universities are being enabled to offer courses in the distance open and online mode, mostly in collaboration with the edtech startups and the unicorns. These physical universities that are existing are also tying up with the edtech companies as well, and they are collaborating to offer different degrees, so on and so forth. Some have even already outsourced the delivery of their courses to such agencies. Students are also made to complete a certain portion of the course requirements through the massive open online courses, and additionally they can accumulate credits at will and deposit them in the academic bank of credit to be exchanged for a degree at a later stage. These are the other initiatives which have been taken by the government of India. So the author in this particular case has given us some arguments which says that digital university may work and we need to promote digital education. There are also other set of arguments which says that such should be in addition to the physical infrastructure and the physical classrooms, but only digital education may not work, says the author. What are the arguments in favor of digital education? When we look into the digital education, it proclaims to provide equitable access to quality higher education and employment enhancing skill development programs to all. What do we mean by it? As of now, if a person has to study, he has to go to the classes physically. But there are a number of people who may not be able to go. Why? Because they have to work for the family as well. They may be engaged in multiple other activities as well. These people may not be able to go to the physical classes. But if it is online classes, they would be able to learn. And at the same time, when they go to these higher education sector on the online platform, they will learn new skill set. As they learn new skill set, they will have much better employment opportunities. So this is the right way forward, says the author. Added to it, during the COVID-19, we did have number of people who were able to access the education. And when it comes to the online, it happens to be the cheapest way of enhancing access to the quality education. While we were able to do it during COVID, and we also know if it is to do with the physical infrastructure, they have to spend more as well. They have to travel as well. They have to invest their time as well. And during this period, they have to invest a lot of money. But if it is via the digital tools where digital university is being promoted, in that case the cost effectiveness is also taken into picture as well. There is an increasing recognition that the current university model is rigid and that the traditional universities have failed to customize the education. What do we mean by it? It means that there are various interests for the students, there are different financial capabilities, and each student has a different cognitive ability as well. When it comes to the traditional model, they are not able to cater to all these differences, but the new digital model is able to cater to the needs of the students. With emerging technologies driving information economies, it also becomes necessary for those employed to acquire new skills relevant to their changing roles. This has to do with all those people who are working. For example, if a person is working, he may not be able to study full time. So what is an alternative to this person? If it is offered on an online platform and if it is giving him the flexibility. He would be able to come back from work. He would also be able to study as well. He would be also able to upskill himself as well. If he has to quit the job, he already has the responsibility of his family or his children or his parents, so he may not be able to upskill himself. So because we are living in an information technology era which is giving us the flexibility, why not study at any place anytime and then increase the skill set? So the digital university and the digital mode of education gives this option to the person. The digital university can also integrate existing capacities such as Swayamprabha, EPG Pathashala, EGY Ankush, National Digital Library, virtual labs into one organic entity. So we would be able to gel up with other public institutions. We would be able to tie up with the Indian Institutes of Technology, Indian Institutes of Management and central universities to provide an affordable world-class teaching, so that we would be able to learn some of the advantages with the digital mode of education. However, there are also arguments which say that it may not be successful as well. Why is that it may not be successful? That is because of the inherent limitations of the technology. What are these inherent technology limitations? One, people do not have access to such technologies. Two, people do not have access to the internet connectivity. And if we are considering the remote areas, where remote areas do not have the towers, where they do not have the internet, how can you push this? Digital mode of education is the first major concern. Then there is blunder to regard technology mediated teaching learning as an alternative to face education. When it comes to the physical mode, what happens? You go to the colleges, you go to interact with the lecturers, you also have your peer friends as well. Why do we go to college? That is because of the interaction. You would also know how to negotiate as well. You would also increase your interpersonal skills as well. You would also understand in a better way when you debate and deliberate. When you speak about the information technology, using the tools of information technology, there is one person teaching and you would also have the other person who is viewing to it, trying to understand, but there is no discussion that is happening. All the peers will not be able to discuss as well. And if it is to do with the research, the higher education sector should be open more to these people in the physical areas, not on the virtual areas, is the second major concern. Open and distance mode of learning, including the latest model based on digital and virtual delivery, often finds favors with the government due to cost considerations. So the government are opening such things because they can cut down on the cost. But this is where the government also has the responsibility as well. The government, being a welfare state, has to open all these universities in the physical mode. They have to establish even in the remote areas, and once they establish the universities, there are multiple other areas which also get inputs as well. Let's say for example, if they are opening colleges in, let's say, a remote area, you would hold the building, you would also have the infrastructure, you would have to recruit the lecturers as well, and at the same time you would require the benches, you would also require other tools as well. All this will immediately come into picture. But if you are outsourcing or using only digital tools, this will not come up, and as a result there are some areas which are getting disturbed. So these are some of the areas which the author says are the limitations and the challenges when it comes to the digital mode. However, going forward, we know for the fact that the digital education or the digital university is here to persist. But how are we going to check the quality? The quality check has to be done. There has to be one institute which looks into the quality of education, and at the same time what we require is strict oversight, tight regulation, rigorous process to ensure high standards and robust quality control. If we are able to do so, in addition to the physical infrastructure that we have, physical education that we have, we can also have an alternative. But this alternative should not reimpose itself on the physical education, but in addition to the physical education, we can supplement it so that people also get the skill set. Is what is this article all about? It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Modi's two summits, UAE trumps G7. This article here is drawing a comparison between the G7 meeting as well as the UAE summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently went to Germany to attend the G7 summit, and he is also going to UAE as well, where he would be meeting the president of UAE. So the author says, except for United States of America, India has more relationship with with UAE. It has more advantages with UAE. We make more exports and imports with respect to UAE. So the advantages, not in terms of Modi attending G7, yes, it is important. But if you are comparing it, in that case, we have to give importance to UAE. Why? Because of the remittances that we have, because we have large number of people who are working there, we have larger foreign direct investments that is coming from the UAE, and at the same time, we also have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. If we consider G7, there are countries which also dictate terms to us. They also say that we should not be buying oil from this country. They also say that India should be exporting wheat and sugar at a particular price, but UAE does not impose such restrictions. So if you juxtapose, if you compare, India has an advantage with UAE. This article is primarily about the synergy between India and UAE, and it also thanks Prime Minister Narendra Modi for re-energizing this relationship. This relationship was almost dormant. Energy was poured into by the Modi administration. This is the fourth visit made by Prime Minister to Abu Dhabi and sixth summit with Sheikh Mohammed over the last 7 years, says the author. In all likelihood, we will further energize this relationship, and what we will have is a distinguished relationship between India and UAE, says the author. There are other issues that are also covered in terms of the exports, in terms of the imports. What are the advantages? We have covered this in one of our videos on the big news. The link will be given in the description box. You can look into it. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the significance of Sajid Mir's conviction in Pakistan. The article here is speaking about Sajid Mir. Who is Sajid Mir? He happened to be the chief planner of the November 26, 2008 terrorist attack in Mumbai. Mir was also responsible for recruiting terrorists for Lashkar's international operations. He was always on the radar of America as well, and he was recently convicted on charges of terror financing by the Pakistan Anti-Terrorism Court. Why did they sentence him? That is because Pakistan right now is in the Financial Action Task Force grey list. They want to come outside this grey list. As a result, they have gone ahead with this conviction. What does this article speak about? The article takes into picture two important parameters. One is the issue with respect to this conviction. Why? That is because in the past, Pakistan has said that this person is dead. Pakistan has said that this person is not in the custody of Pakistan, but all of a sudden, Pakistan is able to find out that this person exists in Pakistan and goes ahead with the conviction. It also shows that the Pakistan protects these Lashkar assets. It uses them whenever it wants to and indirectly promotes these non-state actors against India. So the shadow nature of the Mir's arrest and the conviction clearly shows that Pakistan is using its double games in this particular area. But why is Pakistan coming up with this conviction right now? That is because it is currently placed in the grey list. It has to come outside this grey list. It has to be removed from the FATF grey list. That is why it is showing to the FATF that we are also contributing to all the guidelines that you are saying, so that the minute it is out, it may go back to its original character. So if we speak about Pakistan, as of now, it has taken measures of convicting Syed, Lakhavi and now Mir as well. But is it going to continue or not is what we have to wait and watch. Pakistan has taken this initiative. That is because if it continues to be there in the grey list, it is already bleeding through the economic crisis. And further, if it is present, not many countries would want to do business with it. And as a result, it may bleed further on the economic terms, which is why it has taken up this initiative. That is all you have to know with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India's gig workforce to reach 2.35 crore by 2030. The article here is speaking about Niti Aayog's report. Niti Aayog has come up with a report where it has said the number of gig workers is estimated to be 77 lakh in 2020 and 21. According to Niti Aayog, as of now, if you consider the gig workers, they are not provided social security schemes and programs. So this recommendation goes on to say that in the near future, these gig workers will also have to be provided all these social security schemes and measures. As of now, these people are termed as the independent contractors, and as a result, they are not able to get any of these aspects of workplace protection and entitlements. So this should not be happening in the near future, and they should be provided social security, work accident insurance, says the Niti Ayog. The Niti Ayog broadly categorizes them into two important types of gig workers. One is what is called as the platform workers. The other is the non-platform based workers. Who are these gig workers? Let's say, for example, if you have people who come and deliver food to you on Swiggy or Zomato, these are the people who are working on the gig workers. So the gig workers are not the permanent employees of the company, but instead they are only there for a day. They can be there for a week. They can be there because they have the flexibility to do that job for a particular period of time. So they are not part of the formal economy, but they are working for a formal company, but their jobs are not coming under the formal economy. So when you consider the platform workers in gig economy, these are the people who make use of a platform. Let's say, for example, Zomato is a platform, Swiggy is a platform, Amazon is a platform, Flipkart is a platform. So if you have an internet based platform via which they're able to find the jobs, such is called as the platform workers. Or there are also non-platform based workers as well. Let's say, for example, you have the plumbers, you also have the carpenters. They do not have the platform on which they would be able to get the jobs. Instead, it is the word of mouth that works. Such people are also called as the non-platform based workers. So a gig worker is a person who is working for a temporary period of time. He is doing that particular work, and he does not have any social security or work accident insurance. So the Niti Ayog says that such people will have to be provided such insurances going forward. The report also noted that at present about 47% of the gig worker is the medium skilled jobs, about 22% in high skilled, and about 31% in low skilled jobs, and the trend shows the concentration of workers in medium skilled jobs is declining, and that of the low skilled and high skilled is increasing. So the Niti Ayog goes on to recommend, as of now, we have something called as the Startup India Initiative. So going forward, the government similarly will have to come up with Platform India Initiative, says the Niti Ayog. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Ignoring the protocol under fiscal responsibility and budget management, if states continue with fiscal profligacy, they will be heading towards unsustainable high debt with catastrophic consequences for macroeconomic stability. Suggest reforms to keep a check on freebie culture. Next question. The idea of establishing the digital university in India will transform the educational landscape of the country. Critically examine. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.